Okay, the Boris Johnson news, his future as Prime Minister, where's that going? There are calls for his resignation. Of course, it is the big story of the day. Let's go to Lucy Beresford, who's a psychotherapist, and get her take on all of this. Where is Johnson standing, and what are people feeling towards him? Because Isabel and I say here in the studio, there's people for whom he can do absolutely no wrong, and there's people just wanting rid of him completely. He's a very divisive sort of figure.
Yes, he's a very Marmite character. And there is an argument to say that the latest revelations, his apology, or was it a non-apology at PMQs yesterday, that might necessarily not move the dial any further, because there already were only about 21% of the electorate who actually thought that he was obeying the rules. So that was a large majority of people didn't think that Boris was the kind of person who obeyed the rules. And this is before Partygate really kicked off. I think part of the problem is what is going to happen next around him. It's less about what he does and what he says, and more about what the people around him are going to do, whether that's the cabinet, whether that's the wider Conservative Parliamentary Party, or obviously upcoming in May, some of the local elections.
Yeah. The general public, they can't be in control of that. But I thought, Isabel, I don't think people like to see people humiliated or stressed or whatever. And I think Boris Johnson, he didn't say sorry, but he looked, how would you describe how he looked, Lucy, yesterday?
Well, there were times when he looked quite stony-faced. And there are rumours that after he left the House of Commons, he was reported to have given the impression that he felt that he had been badly mistreated. So there can be some sense in which he feels this is very unfair. And there might be people out there listening to that or listening to us today thinking, well, we think what he did was unfair as well. The problem is, when it comes to making a decision about whether Boris should go or not, and you're absolutely right, until the local elections in May, the electorate doesn't really get to have a say, but the people around him, the cabinet or the parliamentary party, they do have some options. And the problem is that psychologically, when we've got really, really big decisions to make in our lives, we can often freeze, we can often run around trying to find lots and lots of information, but actually that's just procrastination. So in terms of people manoeuvring against him to actually get him out, what I am observing is that there seems to be a lot of paralysis.
Yeah, and you know what, you talk about the way he's being perceived and people perhaps feeling sorry for him on a human level because they're seeing somebody being humiliated. But it's all a bit, I don't know, House of Cards or Game of Thrones. You talk about people being on manoeuvres, and there's lots being made in the papers today about the fact that Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, who are favourites to replace him should he ever go, being very late to come out and lend him their support, which they're expected to do because they are on the payroll as their ministers in the government. But, can we read much into that? And is there a psychology behind that? They're trying to play to their own potential audience.
Well, I think at the moment, what I've observed over the last, say, 24 hours is that everybody is now just waiting. It's a waiting game. And who has got the most patience, who are going to be having conversations behind the scenes, but nobody actually wants to put their head above the parapet. I think you are right that some people feel very sorry for Boris Johnson. This is what I mean. I don't necessarily think the apology or non-apology will change things significantly. I think people will already have made their mind up about Boris Johnson. They either like him or they don't. What happens next, psychologically, is whether anybody can actually turn their decision to get rid of Boris Johnson into actual action. Because psychologically, nothing really matters. You can decide to do something all you like, change jobs, leave your partner, have a baby. Nothing actually changes until you take action to do that. And at the moment, all we've got are whispers, rumours and words. Until somebody actually goes and does something, nothing is going to change.
And that may be in the form of the report that we're waiting for tomorrow. But Lucy, what action would you think, looking at Boris Johnson yesterday, assessing the whole situation, if you were to advise him, what would you be saying? What do you think he should be doing?
Well, when I gave a TED talk about infidelity, I talked a lot about contrition and how important it is to say sorry in a way that really shows that you mean it. And it isn't enough to say, if you were, for example, the person who had who had been having an affair, to say, I'm sorry, I'm now sleeping in the spare room. That's not an apology. That's a sign of regret. And what I would be counselling is that there needs to be a real effort from Boris Johnson to apologise with words that actually show sincerity. I think there needs to be ownership in terms of his part in any of the events that are being discussed. And then, unfortunately for him, daily action to prove to everybody that he actually means what he says, that he is sorry, that things have changed, and that he learns from this going forward.
Well, many would say he's got experience in all of that. He's had a chaotic private life. Perhaps he can win over the hearts and minds of his party and his electorate. All is to play for. Lucy Beresford, good to get your thoughts. Thanks very
Lucy.
much indeed.